Alright, how's it going, everybody? My name is Infamous Isaac. I'm here with Oppenheimer, a Christopher Nolan movie released in July 2023. And man, let me tell you, I have been waiting to watch this movie for a while now. Waiting for this month to go by to watch it was painful. But now that I finally got the chance to talk about it, and after watching it and all that, I am here to tell you guys how I feel about it. So, without further ado, let's get into my non spoiler and non spoiler thoughts and opinions for Oppenheimer. So getting into the non-spoilers for this movie, I'll say right now, I think this movie is a 9 out of 10. Not everybody who watches this movie is going to enjoy it, and I can say that wholeheartedly because this movie, it's like what Logan Paul said, it is just a lot of talking. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that to hate on the movie or anything. I knew this movie was going to be a lot of talking. It's 3 hours long. I didn't expect Oppenheimer to just show up and John Wick people. But this isn't an action movie. This is a case study on Robert J. Oppenheimer and the time that he lived in while he was making the atom bomb. So if that doesn't sound interesting on top of this being a 3 hour movie, then I'm gonna be honest, this movie isn't really for you. And that's perfectly fine. I'm not saying that to ostracize people who may not be interested in a topic like this. But that's why the fact that Barbie released alongside this movie was so perfect because you can watch one or the other. Barbie is a lot more for the general audience and a lot more people can watch that because people know who that is. And people somewhat know who Robert J. Oppenheimer is, but at the same time, you have like a 2 hour or 1.5 hour movie about a popular children's toy versus a guy who made an atom bomb. Like the tonal differences are way different. So just be aware that when you go to watch it, or if you do want to watch it. I genuinely thought this movie was phenomenal. I thought that the actors were amazing. There was so many actors that I didn't know were in this movie. Like Cillian Murphy, he's the main character, so of course I knew he was there, right? But then you see people like Robert Downey Jr. Like, what are you doing here, bro? What? That's so cool. You have Matt Damon, he's also here. You have Jack Quaid. You have Josh Peck. It's like, dog. These are people who I've seen in Avengers, in The Martian, in Drake and Josh, in The Boys, but they all come together for Robert J. Oppenheimer, bro. Like, what? On top of that, you have the music as well. I thought the music was great. You have the characters themselves. I thought they were really engaging. But I didn't hate any of the characters. I just thought they were people. And that was so cool. You have the cinematography. I thought it was good. Some of the camera angles were just so cool, but for me, my favorite ones were always when Cillian Murphy was just staring at the camera. It's so funny, so chilling, and so cool. The story itself was super cool, probably the best part of the movie. And granted, I'm gonna have to rewatch this movie at some point because I missed like the first 15 minutes of it. I was just so engaged the whole time because it was my first time watching it. But at the same time, if I gave it a rewatch after some time, I feel like I would still enjoy it. Maybe it would drop to like an 8.5 for me, but this movie was just great, man. If you're interested at all in watching this movie, I highly recommend it. And if you don't enjoy it, at the very least, you know something about the guy who made the atomic bomb. But again, if you take anything away from the spoiler-free section, this movie isn't for everybody, but if you do give it a chance, in my opinion, I think it's a great movie. So with that being said, 9 out of 10. So without further ado, let's get into the spoilers. As per usual, if you don't want to be spoiled for Oppenheimer, which I highly recommend not getting spoiled for this movie is better when you go in blind. So whenever you can, go watch the movie. If you want to, you can come back to this video. If not, the video will always be here, you know? But regardless, let's begin. So for the spoiler section, I gave a general synopsis instead of the usual in-depth stuff that I go into because A, there's just too much for me to try to go into in this one video alone, and B, because it's better if you watch it yourself in the movie. And this movie is about Robert J. Oppenheimer, the creator of the atomic bomb, and to me, this movie is split up in three sections. The beginning, the building of the bomb, and then the aftermath of the bomb. So in the beginning, after the first 15 minutes that I missed, it was basically just seeing Oppenheimer go through his life in the beginning before he got contracted to make the bomb, where he's in college, he's learning, he's trying to become a physicist. This was around the time where Albert Einstein was breaking into the scene with physics, and here we get to see his escapades with romance, with making friends and all that type of stuff. We get to see his brother and his girlfriend, where they're both communists. Since this is the 1940s, it's the 20th century, we get to see all the problems that were going around. We get to see all these different places that he went to. We get to see all the physicists that he met before he made the bomb before World War II. It was just learning about him and the life that he had up to that point. And this part of the movie is probably my least favorite because we were just building up to what was going to happen, right? But once we started transitioning from the beginning to the middle act, which is bar none the largest out of all the movie, I really started enjoying it. And it's not like the beginning was bad, it's just you really started to feel that this is going to be a 3 hour movie. So one cool thing that this movie does is whenever they're explaining the physics, the movie itself shows what they're talking about, at least the physics that they understand at each current point that they talk about it. Like with the atomic bomb, they're just talking about the logistics of what they're doing, but not yet understanding how it works. But then later on, as they understand more and more, we get more visuals. And it's a way to basically describe what's going on to the common man who isn't a physicist. But with that out of the way that the movie transitions into the middle act is by having a general named Groves show up at Oppenheimer's university where he's teaching at right now. And he proposes something to Oppie saying like, yo, you can help the United States during its time of need. Can you help us make a weapon to deter the Germans? And by the way, Oppie is the nickname that people gave him in the movie. So once recruited by General Groves, Oppenheimer goes around all of the US and anywhere that he can think of that isn't involved in Germany to get some scientists to recruit them to help them make the atomic bomb. So this is where we get to see Josh Peck, Jack Quaid show up. And something cool is that we get to see flashes forward throughout bits and pieces of the first and second act of this movie. We see characters like Strauss, like Oppenheimer when they're a lot older, and the repercussions of the atomic bomb. But here we go into Act 2, the creation of the atomic bomb. So a bunch of scientists were gathered up in Los Alamos, Mexico, due to Oppenheimer's decision, and they're all working in a small town to make the weapon. A bunch of children and wives for all the scientists showed up. They live in this small facility, and now the only thing that they need to do is make the bomb. So here we get to see the stress and the politics and all the generals and the military and the world events that play into the creation of the bomb. And it takes 3 years basically to build the bomb. And once that's all done, the atomic bomb is real. And now that that's done, the military comes in, they confiscate the weapons, they understand how it's gonna work, and they leave, leaving Los Alamos empty. All the scientists to walk freely, basically saying like, yo, do not tell a single person about this. And they all leave, right? And part two truly ends when we find out that Hiroshima and Nagasaki were bombed. We even had a meeting during the middle of it where we saw Oppenheimer and General Groves meet with some very important politicians during war talks, and they were just trying to figure out what would be the best spot to bomb Japan. Because at the end of the day, they're not trying to wipe out the entire island to get them to surrender. And so they're trying to send a message, but also limit the casualties as much as they can. Now we get to the third and final act. Oppenheimer, after the bomb, becoming the heralded hero for making this weapon, and then the immediate fall because people besmirch his name, and Oppenheimer started feeling guilt. So one thing that we see throughout this movie is that Strauss is a reoccurring character, whether it's during the Cold War, whether it's before he made the bomb, or whether it's during. Strauss was always there in some sentiment, right? And what we learn in the final act of the movie is that Strauss actually hates Oppenheimer. And it's because of the one time that he embarrassed him when Strauss was talking about the isotopes, and Oppenheimer is just like, yeah, these don't work, we don't need those anymore. And that jealousy festered for a long time, with Oppenheimer here thinking that Strauss was one of his friends, but Kitty herself actually realizing, like, yo, it was him. It was him the whole time. He's always hated you. She caught on very quickly. So Strauss then gathered a couple of select people that he could use to basically besmirch Oppenheimer, who also hated him. So Nichols, who was under Groves, you have Borden as well, who basically made a smear campaign against Oppenheimer, and then a select group of people who went to interview Oppenheimer about his state of security in the United States and all that. Not as a court trial, but as a just a normal meeting where there were a bunch of prosecutors present, and Oppenheimer brought his own lawyer out of suggestion, right? In the first and second act, all those flashes forward were this part of the movie, the third act. And so as Strauss is in the court of law testifying against Oppenheimer, so he can basically just his reputation could be besmirched even more. David Hill goes to testify against Oppenheimer, quote unquote, but in reality, it's against Strauss once he shows up because Strauss is very corrupt. He is a politician that used and abused his power over a petty, vindictive emotion that he felt because he got embarrassed like 20 years ago, right? And so David Hill, even though he, like Oppenheimer never did anything for him, nor did he really help him, he still testified against Strauss because it was the right thing to do. Because as far as it was concerned, Oppenheimer was gonna die a martyr. He's gonna go to prison or get killed or assassinated, but he just wasn't going to be free. But now that David Hill testified against Strauss and all of the corrupt stuff that he was dealing with, Oppenheimer's name is no longer besmirched. And so now we get to the end of the movie, and throughout the movie, we got to see glimpses of Oppenheimer talking to Albert Einstein. It wasn't many. I think in reality, it was only like two times, three times. But they did talk, and it was so cool. Genuinely, as nerdy as it sounds, it felt like two of your favorite characters from media just coming together. Like I have no interest in physics whatsoever, but just seeing those two come together and just chopping it up, I don't know what it is, but it's so cool. And when those two started talking, it was basically Albert Einstein telling Oppie, like, you are at the height of your career right now. Just understand that there are people that are trying to improve physics, and one point you will be seen as a forefather, as an elder in this, the same way I am. Some things that you just won't understand and that will be bigger than all of us. So just be aware of that. But with that being said, we end the movie with that Albert Einstein talk. But to keep it short, this movie is great. I generally think that it's worth to watch if you haven't watched it. Again, like I said earlier, it's not for everybody, but there is stuff that anybody can pull from this movie and just like. A lot of people were excited for the explosions. For me, when I was seeing the explosion happen for the atomic bomb, it was like, yo, what's going to happen? How loud is it going to be? It was loud, but there was that eerie silence, that calm quiet before the storm. And then it was loud. It wasn't as loud as I thought it was going to be. Like, I genuinely thought like the bomb was just going to come out and grab my neck. But I was alright. It wasn't anything like I'm going to have my eardrum shattered, which is good. But if you can, and if you have the time, definitely watch this movie. I think it's great. But with that being said, let me know down below what you think about this movie. Did you like it? Did you hate it? I didn't explain it much in this video, but this movie shows well the hubris that comes with trying to make something like this because Oppenheimer wanted to protect his country, you know? He felt like his way of life and the people around him, it was being threatened by enemies across sea, right? But then once he created it and once he saw the aftermath and what was left after the bombs were dropped, he realized like, no, we can just fix these problems without having to always resort to violence. But it happened, and now his tool was being put to use to destroy other people's livelihoods. Those same people that said that we're trying to minimize and make people surrender, they lied basically. They lied to him. Even the president at the time, when Oppenheimer met with him, called him soft because the president was the one that made the call. He pressed the button, but he didn't clearly understand the aftermath and the result of what would happen. It's chilling for sure. Like World War II and just world wars in general, man. They have crazy effects that last throughout a lifetime. Put a spoiler warning at the top of your comment before you do that as well. But thank y'all for watching. I hope y'all enjoy. I'll see you all in the next video. A lot of videos are going to be on the horizon soon. I'm going to try my best to get them out as fast as I can. They're going to be some crazy ones for sure. So be on the lookout for that. But I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.